This is The Chris Berry Show. Expert information on elder law, retirement, and estate planning. Information that you can understand. Here's your host, Chris Berry.
Hello, welcome to The Chris Berry Show. This is Chris Berry, where we talk wealth, estate, and tax planning every Sunday at 2 p.m. on The Chris Berry Show. If you do have questions, in our third segment today, as always, we're going to answer some of those reader or listener questions. If you do have a question, give us a call at 810-355-2584. And you're listening to Chris Berry on FM 101.5, AM 1400, The Patriot. And every week we like to start the show off with what I call a positive focus, something positive that happened in this past week. And for me, most definitely, it was a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. It was a little warm, but certainly enjoyed it. I'm not going to complain about the temperatures after the rough winter we had. So we had a great Memorial weekend, spent the time with family. I live on a lake, and we were able to get out on the boat and spend some time on the water. My two kids, Ryan and Madison, they're age 7 and 5, and it's amazing just seeing how much they've grown since last year. My daughter last year was afraid to get in the kayak. This year, our first time kayaking around the lake, she was using it as a stand-up paddleboard. So it was pretty fun, pretty exciting, a great way to start off the beginning of summer. And then the following day, it was great to honor the fallen veterans, which is the purpose of Memorial Day. My son and I had the privilege of walking in the Memorial Day parade. And I was trying to remember back, I think it's actually my first time ever walking in a parade, and it's kind of fun to be able to do it with my son. He's a member of Cub Scouts. He's a wolf this year, and so part of the parade we were walking and handing out waters on a very hot day. And it was pretty exciting because we built a float, so we spent some of the weekend building the float, and our float actually took first place in the parade. So it was pretty exciting, and my son was pretty excited about it as well. But it was quite the walk. We walked for about a mile. Now, when I say walk, I was the one doing the walking. Somehow my son was one of the Cub Scouts that was able to ride on the float. So as I was sitting there sweating, handing out waters, probably drinking more waters than I was handing out, my son was sitting comfortably on the float. And adding insult to injury, I'd hurt my toe about a week before. I have turf toe, which makes walking around a little painful right now. So that mile walk in the parade and then mile walk back to the car, it was difficult in the heat, but it was certainly a positive focus for me to be able to walk with my son in Cub Scouts. So that was my positive focus. Also, this past week, something that's pretty interesting. I'm part of what's called the Dementia Coalition. So some of individuals involved in dementia care, social workers, doctors, some lawyers, professors, about 20 of us are working on a plan for the state of Michigan to help identify any gaps that the state of Michigan has in terms of services, support, resources for individuals suffering from dementia. So something that we do at our firm is we help people navigate the long-term care system. I have a lot of clients that do have dementia. It's something that's been a part of my family. So I was honored to be picked by one of the heads of the Dementia Coalition to help participate in putting together a state plan. So we actually just had a subgroup meeting actually at our office where we had about 15 people on the legal, financial, and safety subgroup talking about dementia, the needs the state of Michigan has, so that we can identify some of the gaps some of the recommendations we would have to the state of Michigan to be able to close those gaps. Dementia is something that affects a lot of seniors, so it's something that's important to do. So some of the things we talked about were guardianships and how sometimes guardianships are pushed a little too much, in the sense that guardianship should really be one of the last ditch efforts to help someone in terms of managing their finances. So typically, if someone does need assistance in managing their finances, we don't want to jump to the guardianship. So one of the things that came out of the meeting was that one of the biggest issues is, first of all, when to intervene when a loved one does have dementia, and to what level should we intervene if we have a loved one that has dementia. So the first issue is, when do we intervene? When do we get involved? Because it's really a gray area. You don't go from healthy to being fully incapacitated. There's typically a range that happens. So the most important thing is first identifying when to intervene. So because really what you're doing is, if you do intervene and intervene in the wrong way, you're taking away someone's independence. For example, one of the things that was brought up was, when do you take away someone's ability to drive? Because that's really isolating if someone cannot drive anymore. And I heard an interesting approach that a family could take if they're concerned about a loved one driving and they think that it might cause harm to them or someone else. And the approach I heard, and this was actually from a sheriff who is part of the coalition and part of our legal safety and financial subgroup. And the recommendation he has, and that he's recommended to families, is that if they're concerned about a loved one driving who has dementia and they think that they shouldn't be driving, rather than intervening themselves and trying to take away the keys themselves and being the bad guy, one of the things that they could do is they could call local authorities to make a recommendation, and then the authorities could get involved. The local police officer could get involved and have that individual take a driving test. So I thought that was an interesting way to shift some of the burden from the family to local authorities if you're concerned with a loved one driving when they shouldn't be due to dementia. But that just shows just how tricky this situation can be. So the first issue was just identifying when to get involved, because understand there's a spectrum, and it's not one or the other. There is a gray area involved. And then the second step is to identify how to get involved. What level of involvement should there be? And we mentioned how guardianships, it seems like people just jump to the guardianship route. And the downside of the guardianship route is that you're getting the courts involved. So we typically recommend, at the very least, having a financial and medical power of attorney, appointing someone to be able to make financial and medical decisions. Now, the downside of that is that you're not putting protections for that individual. They could still enter into contracts, that type of thing. So that's where maybe you could look at trusts. By putting assets into the trust, you could appoint someone else as a trustee to manage the money for that individual who has dementia. And then the third step, if that doesn't work, would be going that guardianship route. But it's important work. We spent about 2 hours talking about the issues, and one of our goals is to have a final working document and put on a series of workshops or summits to then present to the state of Michigan, maybe even Congress. So pretty excited to be involved in that dementia coalition. Things are moving forward pretty well in terms of having a working document that we can then present to the state of Michigan. So also this past week, I had a caller call in, leave a message on our voicemail, and you can leave messages or ask questions by calling 810-355-2584 at any time. And if you do ask a question, we'll try to get a chance to read that on air and answer that question. But I had a caller call in and comment just how much she enjoyed the last show, where we talked about protecting yourself from government protecting from paying unnecessary taxes. And she just really commented that the show really hit a nerve with her because we were talking about, we started with a question, do you think taxes are going to be higher or lower in the future? And a lot of people think taxes are going to be higher. And so if that's the case, doesn't it make sense to intelligently put together a plan to pay taxes on your tax-deferred accounts sooner rather than later? So those IRAs and those 401ks, you look at that and you say, hey, I have this big bucket of money in those tax-deferred accounts, but understand that you have a mortgage on those, that all that money, that isn't yours. You're in partnership with the U.S. government. And before you can spend that money, you need to get out of that partnership with the U.S. government. It's like you have basically a mortgage. So on your home, you might have a mortgage, and if your home's valued at $200,000 and you have a mortgage of $100,000, well, really, you only have $100,000 worth of equity. Well, same deal with your IRAs and your 401ks. And not only do you have a mortgage, but it's an adjustable rate mortgage. And so the president, with his new tax plan, has just lowered those rates. And so the question is, doesn't it make sense to look at, in an intelligent manner, paying taxes now versus later? Because the way the laws are set up today, they are scheduled to go back up, those marginal tax rates. And so we spent some time talking about that last week and had a good listener response and had an individual call in and ask some questions about her own specific situation. So, and this week, actually, we're going to be having a workshop talking about this very subject, taxes in retirement. And if you want information on that workshop, give us a call at 810-355-2584 or shoot us an email at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com. Or visit our website at thechrisberryshow.com, where you can see some information to sign up for that workshop. It's going to be in Livonia, I think at the Livonia Library. But if you do want information on that workshop, tax-free retirement or managing taxes in retirement, then please visit our website at thechrisberryshow.com, and we'll have some information on that workshop for you. So now this week, what we're going to be talking about in this next segment, we're going to be talking about the elder care journey. So kind of fitting into our discussion with the Dementia Coalition, we're going to talk about that elder care journey of how people don't go from being healthy to passing away. They go through an aging process. And so I'm excited to talk about that in our next segment. And also I'm excited that next week we're going to have a guest. We're going to have Maggie Gibbons from the Alzheimer's Association talking about Alzheimer's, which is a form of dementia. And I think Maggie will spend some time talking about the differences or what is dementia versus Alzheimer's. But Maggie will be here from the Alzheimer's Association talking about what the Alzheimer's Association does. She's going to be talking about the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which we're a huge supporter of. Every year, I think there's about 600 walks across the U.S. where groups and families and companies gather together to try to raise funds to end Alzheimer's. It's one of those things that just doesn't have a cure yet. So we're raising money to find a cure to fight Alzheimer's. And so this year, the walk that we're supporting is going to be September 29th in Brighton. So we support the Livingston County Walk. There's also a Metro Detroit Walk as well. And you can learn more about the Walk to End Alzheimer's. And if you've had a family member affected and you want to help support the fight to end Alzheimer's, visit our website at thechrisberryshow.com, where there will be a link where you can either join our team or you can donate any amount of money to help fight Alzheimer's. So you can visit thechrisberryshow.com, or you can also go direct to our Alzheimer's page at alzeldercare.com. Last year, our walk raised over $137,000 to go to the Alzheimer's Association. Our team raised over $10,000, almost $11,000 to go to the fight to end Alzheimer's. And we're looking to beat those numbers this year. So if you do want to help support the cause, visit our website, thechrisberryshow.com, where there'll be a link where you can donate money right online there. And so we are excited to have Maggie Gibbons next week talking about the Alzheimer's Association because June is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And so we thought she would be a great guest to bring in to the Chris Berry Show to help educate our listeners on the issues involved with Alzheimer's. So we're very excited for that. So next segment, what we're going to talk about is something that affects those with Alzheimer's, affects the families, and we're going to talk about the elder care journey. And we're going to talk about some of those long-term care costs, and we're going to talk about 6 ways that you can look at paying for long-term care. And so I'm excited to do that. And then in our third segment, as always, we're going to read and answer some of our listeners' questions. And so if you do have questions, you can email us anytime at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com, and we'll take some of those questions and read them on air. Or you can give us a call at 810-355-2584. And you can visit us online at thechrisberryshow.com. And you're listening to The Chris Berry Show. We meet every Sunday at 2 p.m. on FM 101.5, AM 1400, The Patriot. And if you're one of those podcasters like I am, you love listening to podcasts, you can find us on iTunes. And you can get more information on that by going to thechrisberryshow.com. So join me next segment as we talk about the elder care journey and 6 ways to pay for long-term care.
The cost of care for an elderly loved one or a loved one with a chronic illness is shockingly expensive. If you are dealing with the unbelievable cost of care, make sure you get all the benefits you're entitled to. Here's certified elder law attorney Chris Berry from the Elder Care Firm in Brighton.
Most of my clients are really concerned about long-term care costs. They don't know where to turn, and what we can do is put together legal strategies to protect your resources and also bring in additional resources to help pay that cost of care. One of the things that they often say is that I wish I knew about this years prior. And unfortunately, the information's out there, but there's just so few certified elder law attorneys. As the only certified elder law attorney in Livingston County, it's my job to make sure that our seniors, our loved ones, our veterans have the best quality of care possible and the best quality of life possible.
Protect your hard-earned assets from probate, long-term care costs, and the IRS. The Elder Care Firm will get you the governmental benefits you deserve, including veterans benefits and Medicaid. Visit theeldercarefirm.com and schedule a free 15-minute phone consultation. That's theeldercarefirm.com.
Welcome back to the Chris Berry Show. This is Chris Berry, where every Sunday at 2 p.m. We talk legal, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life on FM 101.5, AM 1400, The Patriot. Next segment, we're going to get into some of our listener questions that we received over the past week. If you do have questions, feel free to call in at 810-355-2584. Or shoot us an email at any time. Anytime you can shoot us an email at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com. So last segment, we were talking a little bit about Alzheimer's and the Dementia Coalition. This segment, we're going to talk about some of the things that affect those with Alzheimer's, dementia, or just the aging process. And we're going to talk about what we call the elder care continuum. So one of the things that I've found as part of my practice is that people don't go from healthy to just passing away anymore. They go through an aging process where we start off relatively healthy with no functional limits, and then as we begin to age, we need more and more assistance. Or if we're diagnosed with a condition or disease such as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, or again, just the frailties of aging, we're going to need more and more assistance. And so as part of that, if we do need more assistance, then we're going to need more help. And so we start out living at home independently, and then as we begin to age, again, we need more help. And that might take the form of a spouse as a caregiver until that spouse suffers from caregiver burnout, and now they need more care or more help or have more medical conditions than the person receiving the care. Or it might be family members. So we might have son or daughter coming in, helping out, putting their life on hold to become a full-time caregiver. Or we might have to bring in commercial home care. And if we start bringing in commercial home care, then there's going to be some costs associated with that. Typically, if you're buying home care, it might be $20, $25 an hour, where you're paying $1,000 to $3,000 a month. Now, if you're paying for 24/7 home care, that easily could be $10,000 to $12,000 or $15,000 per month. And then we get to the point where living at home just isn't feasible anymore. And now we might move into independent or assisted livings. And these are going to be things like American House or Sunrise or Brookdale, where it's going to be a hotel or apartment type environment, but there might be some additional services available. So actually a lot of days after work, sometimes I wish I lived in an assisted living where they'd make my meals for me, they'd clean up after me, do my laundry. Kind of sounds nice. All I'd have to worry about is finding out where the euchre game is and playing some shuffleboard. Reminds me of college dorm sometimes. So that's the assisted living, but that's typically going to run you anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 per month. And then the next step is we might need assisted living with memory care, especially if we have Alzheimer's or dementia. And that's going to be that same assisted living type environment, but it's going to be more of a protective environment where there's going to be more memory care services. It's going to be more of a locked down situation. And so that's typically going to run a family anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 per month. And then the next step is nursing home care. This is more of a hospital type environment. A lot of times there might be hospital beds involved, nursing home beds involved. It's going to be more skilled care. And if you're paying for nursing home care, typically that's going to run you anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 per month. Now, I just was working with a family. Son, his mom was paying actually $450 per day, which ends up being about $13,500 a month. And so it seems like the cost of long-term care has gone up within the last year or so. And it's kind of ironic. There's two things that I see increasing in cost greater than the cost of living. And those two things are long-term care costs, which I see as part of my work. And then the other thing which affects me because I have young children and I'm trying to pay for their college is college costs. It's pretty ridiculous. So nursing home costs, generally about $8,000 to $12,000 a month, but can be a little bit more. And the average stay in a nursing home is about 2.5 years, according to a recent MetLife study. And 1 in 2 individuals, 1 in 2 people are going to set foot in a nursing home. So if you're married, either a husband or wife is chances are it's going to set foot into that nursing home. Then another statistic is that 7.5 or 3/4 or 3 out of 4 people are going to need some form of long-term care. And USA Today did a recent article that said if you're diagnosed with dementia today, the lifetime cost of that it could be $730,000. So the question you need to be asking yourself is, how in the world am I going to pay for that? And so we only have 6 ways to pay for long-term care. So the first way is we can private pay. So we just pay out of our own funds. And that works, but what happens when we run out of money? Or if we're a married couple and one spouse needs all the care, how is that healthy spouse going to have any type of quality of life? So we can private pay. The second way is we can look at having the kids pay. A lot of times the kids don't pay financially, but they pay in terms of their time. They're putting their life on a hold to be a full-time caregiver. Or they're taking time out of their day to visit the attorney. So we don't want to rely on the kids paying. The third way we can pay for long-term care is through long-term care insurance. And there's 2 forms of long-term care insurance. There's the old, pure, traditional long-term care insurance policy, which, to be honest, I'm not a big fan of typically. So with this long-term care policy, what happens is that you pay a premium annually, and if you need long-term care, it'll pay out some type of benefit for you. But the problems with this, well, there's a few problems. First of all, the premiums. I've seen families pay on a long-term care insurance policy for 20 years. All of a sudden, around the time when they will need that long-term care, all of a sudden the insurance company hikes up the premiums on them. So now you're left with a situation, do I continue paying the premiums, the higher premiums, which is difficult when you're on a fixed budget of Social Security and your pension? Do I take a reduction in benefits? Well, this is about the time I'm going to need that long-term care benefit, so I don't want to reduce the benefits that I've been paying on my whole life. Or do I let that long-term care policy lapse so they can increase the premiums on you? Another big problem with the pure traditional long-term care insurance policies is that a lot of people don't understand the limitations they have. For example, a lot of long-term care insurance policies will put caps on the amount they'll pay out per day or per month. I saw one policy that would pay out $50 a day of long-term care benefits. Well, if your mom is in a nursing home and she's paying $450 per day, that's just a drop in the bucket. That's not really going to help. Another problem with the long-term care insurance policies is there might be a lifetime cap on benefits. They might only pay out $100,000. Well, according to that USA Today article, the lifetime cost of your diagnosed with dementia could be $730,000. So that $100,000 long-term care policy, again, that's just not sufficient. So an alternative or answer to the problems of that old, pure, traditional long-term care insurance is something called asset-based long-term care. Asset-based long-term care. And so with this asset-based long-term care, basically what it is first of all, you have to have assets, but I look at it as the difference between pure traditional long-term care insurance and asset-based long-term care insurance. It's kind of like the difference between renting a house versus owning. Because the biggest problem with that pure traditional long-term care insurance policy is that if you pay on it for 20, 30 years and then you pass away peacefully in your sleep, well, there's nothing left over. Nothing goes to your loved ones. It's basically like a homeowner's insurance policy and your house never burnt down. But with asset-based long-term care, there's either going to be a long-term care benefit or there's going to be a death benefit. And I like to make the analogy that it's like the difference between renting a house and owning a house. When you rent a house, they might increase the rent at the end of the year, and then if you move out or if you stop renting, there's nothing left over. Versus the asset-based long-term care, with the asset-based long-term care, once you pay for it, you're locked in. The premiums can never increase on you. Sometimes there might not even be premiums if you pay for it in lump sum. But the nice thing about it is that if you pass away peacefully in your sleep without using it, there could be a death benefit. So an example of how this might work is, let's say you have an IRA, and let's say you have $300,000 in your IRA. Well, what you might want to do is get an asset-based long-term care policy, which would chip off $100,000, still yours, still pre-tax, but think of it as we're just kind of changing which pocket you're owning that. Now, that $100,000 could buy you a $4,000 a month long-term care benefit for the rest of your life, or if you were to pass away peacefully in your sleep, maybe it's a $150,000 death benefit. So you're either going to have one or the other. So you're either going to pass away or you're going to need some long-term care. So that's one of the nice things about that asset-based long-term care approach. I prefer it much more than the pure traditional long-term care insurance policy. Now, keep in mind, every person's situation is a little bit different, so it's important to talk to a professional with regards to long-term care. And so if you do have more questions on the long-term care, feel free to shoot us an email at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com or give us a call at 810-355-2584. So as we're talking about the 6 ways to pay for long-term care, we've talked about private paying. We've talked about the kids paying. We've talked about long-term care. Fourth, we have Medicare. So Medicare is a way not really to pay for long-term care, but Medicare pays for your prescription costs, pays for hospice, but also pays for short-term rehab. So if you were to fall, break your hip, go into the hospital, be admitted to the hospital for 3 days, and then be discharged for rehab to a nursing home, Medicare is going to pay 1 to 20 days with nothing out of pocket to you. And then 21 to 100, you're going to have a copay of about $169 per day unless you have supplemental insurance. And then after 100 days, Medicare is going to run out. Now, you don't automatically get 100 days. You have to be continuing to improve with your rehabilitation. And that's actually something we talked about on the Dementia Coalition, is that sometimes individuals with dementia, they don't necessarily participate in the rehab, and they don't get as much rehab as they probably need, especially if someone's also a fall risk. So that was one of the things we talked about on that Dementia Coalition this week, which I found was interesting. So Medicare doesn't really pay for long-term care. What it does pay for is short-term rehab, which brings us to our 5th way to pay for long-term care. And the 5th way to pay for long-term care is the veterans benefit, where if we have a veteran or surviving spouse who needs long-term care, potentially we could bring in an extra $1,000 to $2,000 a month to help pay for that. Now, there's 5 requirements for that VA benefit. And the first one is you must have served 90 days active duty. Second, one of those days needs to be during a period of conflict. Third, you cannot be dishonorably discharged. And then if we're talking about a surviving spouse of a veteran, we need a marriage certificate and a death certificate. Fourth, we need to have more long-term care costs going out than income coming in from Social Security and pension. So we need to be paying for home care. We need to be paying for assisted living. And then 5th, there's an asset test where if an individual has more than $30,000 of countable assets, the VA application will be denied. Now, the nice thing about the VA program is that there's no look-back period. So if you are over in assets, you can set up a Veterans Asset Protection Trust, move assets into the trust, and then get qualified for that VA benefit, which can pay an extra $1,000 to $2,000 a month. And what a lot of families don't realize, in fact, I was sitting down with a daughter of a veteran yesterday, is that if you have a family member taking care of a veteran or surviving spouse, we could potentially set up a care contract where now the veteran pays daughter for the care, and then the VA would then go and reimburse that veteran up to $1,000 to $2,000 a month, tax-free, which if you look at it as a family unit, we're basically bringing in extra $1,000 to $2,000 a month tax-free to the family. So the VA benefit's a great way to pay for long-term care, for home care and assisted living. And in our next segment, we're going to talk briefly about the 6th way to pay for long-term care, which is Medicaid. Medicaid can pay for care in a nursing home. So we'll talk about that in our next segment of the Chris Berry Show. And then after that, we're going to answer some of the questions we received this past week. And if you do have questions, feel free to call 810-355-2584, and we'll get a chance to read those questions and answer some of those questions on air next week. Or you can always email us at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com. And you can listen to The Chris Berry Show every Sunday at 2 p.m. on FM 101.5, AM 1400, The Patriot. And you can join us or listen to us on iTunes as well. And you can get more information at thechrisberryshow.com.
Certified elder law attorney Chris Berry from the Elder Care Firm in Brighton can help you protect your assets from the cost of long-term care, and they can also help you with estate planning, like they did for Linda Emerson.
I had to redo my will. It weighed on me that I hadn't changed it. I wanted to make everything easy for my daughter whenever I do keel over. But I went in, it was very professional, and sat down with Chris. I would definitely suggest him because he knows his stuff and he's not aggressive. He's, very friendly and makes you feel comfortable, because I think he realizes it's not a comfortable thing for people. It was just an easy process. I came out of it and I told my daughter, it's all yours, kiddo.
Hello, I'm attorney Chris Berry. The Elder Care Firm is here to help you and your family find solutions. Call us today.
Visit theeldercarefirm.com today or call 810-214-3800. 810-214-3800.
Welcome back to the Chris Berry Show, where we talk wealth, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life. In our last segment, we're talking about the elder care journey and the cost of long-term care, and we're talking about home care and assisted living and nursing home costs and how nursing homes can cost anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 a month, which I don't care how much money you have, that's going to drain that retirement nest egg. So we're talking about the 6 ways to pay for long-term care, where you could private pay, have the kids pay, long-term care insurance. We're focusing more on the asset-based long-term care insurance, Medicare, veterans benefits, and the last way to pay for long-term care is Medicaid, not Medicaid. Yeah. So Medicaid typically is going to be used to pay for nursing home care. And to qualify for Medicaid, a single individual can only have $2,000 worth of accountable assets. A married couple, they make you cut your assets in half. At most, you can have $120,000. But even if you're married and one spouse is in the nursing home and the other spouse is in the community, they make you cut your assets in half. At most, you can have $120,000. Now, there's things that can be done to protect your assets, because Medicaid does have a 5-year look-back period. They look back 5 years to see if you've made any gifts or moved any money around. And one of the ways that you can protect your assets from the devastating cost of long-term care, especially in a nursing home, is by setting up a castle trust, which is a type of trust where you move the assets into the trust and it starts that 5-year clock, where if you can make it 5 years, then everything inside the trust is protected. It wouldn't have to be spent down, meaning especially with our married couples, if one spouse is living in the nursing home, the other spouse doesn't have to be completely impoverished paying for that, because it's important to protect everything that you've built through your whole life, everything that you've saved. And then if you do have a loved one in a nursing home now, there's still some crisis planning techniques where we might be able to protect maybe half of the money. But it's something that has to be planned for. Medicaid is tricky, a lot of pitfalls involved with it, so it's important to work with a certified elder law attorney in planning for long-term care, planning for Medicaid. So that's the 6 ways to pay for long-term care: private pay, kids pay, long-term care insurance, Medicare, veterans benefits, and Medicaid. And if you want some more information on that, and that's something that we talk about in our workshops, feel free to visit us online at thechrisberryshow.com, and you can get some information on some of our upcoming workshops. We have a workshop coming up on Social Security optimization. That's going to be in Livonia. We have one on taxes and retirement, a tax-efficient retirement. And I think this is actually on the same day. I think we have 3 workshops June 7th, all in Livonia. One on taxes and retirement, one on timing Social Security, and then we have our planning for the second half of life and 3 easy steps workshop in Livonia as well. So it's going to be a busy June 7th. And if you want some more information on any of those workshops, or if you want to attend, visit us online at thechrisberryshow.com or give us a call at 810-355-2584. We'll get that information out to you. And if you are interested in any of those topics, tax-efficient retirement, Social Security timing, or learning the 3 easy steps to legally and financially protect yourself for the second half of life, go ahead and give us a call or visit us online, and we'll get that information out to you. Now, what I'd like to do, and we do this every show, is just answer some of the questions that we receive from the phone calls the past week or emails that we've received. So the first one, it was a caller, Daphne, and she asked, does it make sense to pay the tax now on my IRAs instead of paying taxes later? She has pre-tax money in her IRA, and she was wondering if it makes sense in her situation to pay income taxes now versus later. And the answer, unfortunately, I'm going to give you is it depends. It depends on your situation. It's very individualized in terms of how to plan your taxes. Daphne commented that she has a tax preparer, but a lot of times we find tax preparers, they're just looking in the past and they're reporting on what happened over the past year. One of the things that we do for our clients is we help them try to get the most tax efficient as possible. And so we use sometimes some financial software to do so because we talked about it a lot last week, this concept of marginal tax rates. And as you bring in income, you have to pay a higher marginal tax rate. And a lot of people think taxes are going to go up in the future, but we might not want to jump into some of the other brackets. For example, if you're in the 22% bracket right now, bumping into the 24% bracket, that's only a 2% jump. But if we were to go up to the 32% bracket, then we might not want to do that because it's not going to be as efficient from a tax perspective. So if you want more information on that, again, we're going to have a workshop actually this upcoming Thursday in Livonia. Give us a call, 810-355-2584. And then if you attend that workshop, we can talk about your specific situation. Second question I have, are contributions to a Roth 401k from an employer match pre-tax or after tax? So this is from Rose. She says, I have a 401k for over 10 years through my employer. All my contributions have been after tax. My employer matched my contributions until about 9 years ago due to the recession. Now I want to roll my Roth 401k over to a Roth IRA. However, I'm told that the portion of my Roth 401k that was contributed by my match through my employer is considered pre-tax and must be rolled into a traditional IRA. Is this correct? So it's a little bit confusing, but there's two types of 401ks. In the past, there was only the traditional 401k. Traditional 401k, you would put in money. That money would be pre-tax, meaning you hadn't paid any income tax on it. And then when you withdrew the money, then the money would come out. You would have to pay the income tax. So a lot of people would roll over their IRA, keeping it pre-tax, and then in retirement, they would take it out of the IRA. But when you take it out of the IRA, you have to pay tax on it. Now, what some employers are offering is what's called a Roth 401k. And so the Roth 401k, you contribute to it while you're working, but you pay the income tax that year on it. So it's post-tax, but the growth you get on it is tax-free. And so when you take the money out, that money is tax-free, which works nice in retirement, like we talked about last episode on how you're taxed in retirement and how your Social Security and pension and then your required minimum distributions once you reach 70.5 can be taxed. So the Roth IRA or the Roth 401k, you contribute to it while you're working. You pay the income tax that year, and then when you take it out or you roll it over into a Roth IRA, when you take it out of the IRA, it comes out tax-free. So again, that's one of those keys to a tax-efficient retirement. So Rose is asking, she contributed to the Roth 401k. Her employer matched that, but as she's rolling this out, they're saying that she has to roll over her Roth 401k can be rolled over into a Roth IRA, but the employer match has to be in a traditional IRA. And that's correct, actually. So that's one of the things with the Roth 401ks, that if your employer does offer a match, and one of my recommendations is that if an employer ever offers a match, whether a traditional or Roth option, always take it. It's free money. But if the employer offers the match on the Roth, just the way the tax system is set up, they cannot match it in the Roth. They can match it in the traditional 401k. So let's say you contributed $6,000 to your Roth 401k at work, and then your employer matched that, and let's say it was $500 that they matched. That $500 has to go into a traditional 401k. That employer match cannot go into the Roth. But it's still free money, so I would take the match whenever it's offered. But Rose, to answer your question, yes, that's matching of your Roth contributions will have to go into a traditional IRA. Okay, so next, we're going to have a question here from Joseph. And again, if you do have questions and you want me to take a shot at answering them on air, please give us a call at 810-355-2584. Leave us that question on the voicemail. Or you can shoot us an email at askchris@thechrisberryshow. So this next question is from Joseph. How do we handle a ladybird deed when the owner can no longer make decisions? I have a power of attorney for my mother who has dementia. She set up a ladybird deed that has myself and my siblings listed on the deed. So it sounds like Joseph's mom has a ladybird deed, and a ladybird deed is a type of deed that says it's in mom's name while she's alive, and then when she passes away, then it goes to whoever is named on the deed. And so in this situation with Joseph, it looks like he is named as well as his sibling is listed on the deed. So his question is, how do we handle a ladybird deed when the owner can no longer make decisions? Well, I think in this situation there might not be anything that needs to be done, Joe, because mom set up a ladybird deed. That's going to avoid probate if mom were to pass away. And then it's going to go outright to you and your sibling. So that part is taken care of. What happens when mom passes away? Maybe the question is referring to selling the property. So let's say mom were to move into an assisted living or assisted living with memory care. What's the purpose of having the home? Well, with a power of attorney, financial power of attorney, if it's a well-drafted financial power of attorney, then you would be able to sell the house if that's the best decision for mom. So I think in this situation, things are handled for Joseph. We do a lot of ladybird deeds in our office, and typically we either do a ladybird deed or we deed the house to the Asset Protection Trust. So I think in this situation, Joseph, everything is handled, but you might want to have another attorney review it. Next question here. Can my dad protect his house and other properties if he has a trust from Medicaid? What are the differences between a revocable and an irrevocable trust? And this is from Doug. So Doug is asking about his dad. So can my dad protect his house and other properties if he has a trust from Medicaid? And what's the difference between a revocable and an irrevocable trust? Well, I don't have, that should be a topic for its own radio, own segment, is the differences between a revocable and irrevocable trust. So that's a deep question. But on the most basic level, a revocable trust, think of it like a suitcase. You put assets into the suitcase, and then when you pass away, you pass that suitcase on to successor trustee who then administers it for the beneficiaries. But all a revocable trust really does is avoids probate if it's funded properly and then controls the distribution upon death. Versus an irrevocable trust can avoid probate, control the distribution upon death, but now can bring in some asset protection. And there's a lot of different types of irrevocable trusts out there. We used to use a lot of irrevocable trusts for estate tax planning when the estate tax was at $600,000 or $1 million. But now we use a lot of irrevocable trusts when we're planning for long-term care and protecting assets for that, especially for Medicaid. And so one of the things that we utilize quite often is what's called a castle trust. I want to protect my castle, so we use a castle trust. So what we would do is, in this situation for Doug here, is we would move Dad's house into any other properties or even other assets that Doug's Dad has, we would move it into a castle trust. And then if we can make it 5 years, because Medicaid has a 5-year look-back period, then everything inside of the trust would be protected from that nursing home or Medicaid spend down. Now, if you're to try to do that in a revocable trust, it's not going to work, because a revocable trust for Medicaid purposes, they say that it's a countable asset. So a revocable trust, and this gets people hung up a lot of times, a revocable trust really offers you no benefits while you're alive. The benefit of a revocable trust or a living trust is that when you pass away, if it's funded properly, and we see a lot of trusts that aren't funded properly, if you pass away, if it's funded properly, then it avoids probate. And then also you can control the distribution of the assets. Versus an irrevocable trust or a castle trust can do those two things of avoiding probates and controlling the distribution, but also it builds in that asset protection where we can protect against lawsuits and long-term care costs. So, Doug, I hope that was helpful, and thank you for the questions this week. And if you do have more questions, feel free to email us at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com, and join us every Sunday on FM 101.5 AM 1400, The Patriot. And if you do have questions, you can always call us at 810-335-2584. And join us next week as we have a special guest. We have Maggie Gibbons from the Alzheimer's Association, and she's going to be joining us as we talk about what the Alzheimer's Association does. She's going to be talking about June being Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and we're going to talk about the Walk to End Alzheimer's, where last year as a team we raised nearly $11,000 to fight Alzheimer's, and as a walk last year we raised over $137,000. So if you want to help us beat those goals, please visit us at thechrisberryshow.com, where we have a link to donate, and then join us next week as we talk to Maggie Gibbons and learn about the work the Alzheimer's Association is doing. This has been Chris Berry with The Chris Berry Show. Make it a great week.
Learn more about Chris Berry and the Elder Care Firm by visiting online at michiganestateplanning.com. That's michiganestateplanning.com. You can also call Chris Berry at 888-390-4360. 888-390-4360. This program content reflects the opinions of Chris Berry and his guests, not the Elder Care Firm, Prosperity Capital Advisors, or the C.J. Berry Group, and is subject to change at any time without notice. Content provided herein is for informational purposes only and should not be used or construed as investment or legal advice or a recommendation regarding the purchase or sale of any security or to follow any legal or tax strategy. There's no guarantee that the strategist's statements, opinions, or forecast provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses, which would reduce returns. All investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There's no guarantee that any investment plan or strategy will be successful. We recommend that you consult with a professional dedicated to your needs. This program is furnished by the Elder Care Firm.
If you or a loved one is facing long-term care costs, make sure you talk with certified elder law attorney Chris Berry from the Elder Care Firm, like Jennifer did from Howell.
This past summer, my mom had to transition into a nursing home. So we contacted Chris to help get things in order. You know, I wanted the best. I wanted somebody who knew what they were doing. Chris was able to help save a lot of that money that my mom and dad both worked so hard for. I thought that everything would have to go to the nursing home, but it didn't. He was able to save us half of everything that would have gone if we hadn't contacted the Elder Care Firm. And we're all happy about that. Don't go to the nursing home without contacting Chris first.
Hello, I'm attorney Chris Berry. The Elder Care Firm is here to help you and your family find solutions. Call us today.
Protect your assets from probate, long-term care costs, the IRS, and get the governmental benefits you deserve. Visit theeldercarefirm.com today or call 810-214-3800. 810-214-3800.